The public sector wage war continuing as the South African Federation of Trade Unions begins a nationwide strike against worsening unemployment and economic instability. SAFTU is calling on all workers to stay at home today. That's as the Finance Minister delivers his budget speech. It's planned protests across the country and to march to Parliament as well, where Tito Mboweni will be doing Budget 2021. The Federation has listed a number of grievances, including the erosion of workers' rights, rampant government corruption and the lack of free public education. Let's unpack the story for you now. We're joined by SAFTU's Deputy General Secretary, Moleko Phakedi. Moleko, good morning. It's great to have you with us on the show this morning. And, you know, as a start, it's not the first time we've seen calls by trade union federations like SAFTU calling for effectively, a nationwide shutdown in many ways, people will call it. The question is, how effective is it on a day like Budget Day to guide how Tito Mboweni delivers 2021's budget?
Well, thank you, and good morning to you and your beautiful viewers. I mean, a strike or a protest action is a product of a number of things. One, engagements that would have taken place before, some serious meetings of an organization reflecting on the need to take that decision. Because it goes without saying that the decision to go on strike, it hit hard on the pocket of workers. We must acknowledge that. But the reality of the matter is that it becomes the only language that is quite audible, understood, and that sometimes that makes those who are holding the levers of power to understand and appreciate the reality of the situation that workers are facing. So strike is the only means that we have to advance our interests, to defend our rights, and to ensure that we bring about the necessary change. In recent times, there have been an attack on this right. You would appreciate that in 2018, there were a number of amendments that were made that were intending to curtail this particular right and to make it almost impossible for workers to participate on the strike action or even a protest action of this magnitude.
Yeah.
So I have to believe that is an important way of at least getting our issues across.
You know, it's debatable, isn't it, Moleko, just over how effective it is in terms of getting the needs of workers across. As you say, it's a big price to pay for workers who won't be paid for the day.
Certainly. Hence, it's a last resort on our part. Hence, it's the decision we take when we really see that nothing is getting through to the other parties on the other side. And we go on a protest action or we take even a strike action at an employer level, is because we are not being heard and we are not being responded to positively.
So what's different this year on this strike action for today? What's different given what the Statistician General had to say yesterday about the unemployment numbers? I mean, the official unemployment rate's at 32.5%. Expanded definition stands at 42.6% of South Africans without a job. That and, South Africa continuing to grapple with the fallout of COVID-19. What is different this year in terms of the demands that SAFTU has?
For us to appreciate that point, I think we just need to do a brief historical tour of where we are coming from with the demands that we are putting forth. You would appreciate that some 2018, SAFTU would have engaged on a similar act, and the demand would have been about jobs, about the economy, about the crisis we had in the education system. We would have advanced similar demands on the question of the national minimum wage and our response to the workers' rights that were really under attack, as I've said. But what has been quite worse is that COVID-19 have made it easy, we suppose, for government and businesses to try and justify their onslaught on workers. It is not just a different course of action we are calling for. It's an action that is intended to put it clearer out there that we are fighting back as workers. You would appreciate that we have been in a number of engagement. I mean, we are the first federation to say what we have been given as responses to our previous demands, memoranda, is not helpful for argument's sake. The question of having summits, i.e. your investment summit, your job summit, in response to the job bloodbath that we have experienced in the country, have not yielded any results. You would appreciate that we have been on the forefront of rebuting the finance ministry with their austerity budget that are normally dictated by the interests of the multinational financial institution, and in some instances the rating agents. We have said no to that. We believe that this particular year we have no other option but to fight back and fight back more aggressively. And that's hopefully what will make our government to listen. They have not done so to the best of our ability, of their ability in the past. We believe that this time around they will have to listen. If they don't, we would have no option but to go on even a protracted strike action, hopefully later on. But we hope that they are going to be quite understanding and appreciating the situation that is worsening on the part of workers and the working class. We just talked about the unemployment rate now. An expanded one is about 42%. Things are getting worse, and there are no concrete plans that are responding to that.
Yeah.
We had the ERRP recently that was unveiled. That economic reconstruction and recovery plan is doing nothing whatsoever to bring about the necessary transformation in our economy, to create jobs and even secure the jobs that are currently there. If anything, it actually misleads the entirety of the country to suggest that our crisis on the economy is as a result of COVID-19 alone. You would appreciate the level of corruption that have gone up during the course of the COVID-19 response. These are the issues we must confront head on. Our own workers, members have not got their own increase in the public sector, and they're expected to render the basic services that are the services due to the working communities. How do we do that without us being compensated appropriately or even giving the necessary rents and cents that will ensure that we sustain our livelihood?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we believe this is the way that will bring about that change.
So, Moleko, I want to talk about some of the material demands that SAFTU is making in the wake of this nationwide strike action today. And it speaks to, there are a number of points that I have here in front of me, but part of it speaks to government not using the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse for not delivering on the promises made in the past. I want to begin with the issues around the employment status of people becoming under threat because employers use the pandemic, for example, to either cut wages or to give people bogus contracts. That's the one issue I want you to talk about. And then the second, perhaps, equally important issue is that of free, high-quality public education, which is where it all starts, doesn't it?
True. And maybe let's just start there. You need to take your education demand along with our healthcare demand, because those are at least linked. So far as we are concerned, the education system we have had in the country is the one that continues to perpetuate cheap labor, is the one that continues to perpetuate graduates that their qualifications are not demanded by the economy, or the skills that are not necessarily compatible with what is required by the industries. As a result thereof, you have people who are qualified and who have got quite skills accepting any other job that is on the offer, and as a result accepting any other rate of pay that they are being granted. This is what needs to be addressed, and addressed systematically from our foundation stage up to and including the tertiary level. And you cannot do that if you have two education systems that are still reliant on who can afford what. And little have been done to change the education system, at least at the public level, to the extent that is desired, i.e. we are still running short of proper facilities to run effective education. You are still having shortage of teachers. You still have situations that are quite embarrassing and disappointing that you'd find in some rural schools, and nothing has been done to correct that situation. Is condemning a black child to a perpetual exploitation at the hand of the capital, a government that will have people that are reliant and dependent on it. And it's important to address that. You have the same situation with the health system, a two-tier health system, one for the rich, one for the poor. That creates a problem, because the reality of the matter is that those who rely on the public service are workers, and not only workers, the entirety of the working class communities. And if there have not been any investment in that regard, the unfortunate case is that you are sending people to hospital to die. And that should not be the case. People have lost confidence in our own healthcare system. And COVID-19 would have presented a dire opportunity that the government probably solely needed to bring about the necessary change in those particular systems. Why private healthcare have not been dealt with or tampered with in the midst of the COVID-19? Why we have not been able to bring about employment of nurses and teachers? No one can tell. The employment of the so-called teacher assistant is just an insult. You remember they've not been replacing teachers that have been leaving the teaching profession for whatever reasons. They've not been replacing the nurses in some of the schools. They've closed the nursing colleges in some instances. And this is the problem that SAFTU is trying to respond to and say, you had an opportunity to bring about the necessary change. Our education system is now in disarray because of COVID-19. You now have what we call a shift. It's as if they are security workers, the students. One group, this 7 days in, 7 days out. It's because we've been saying 25 people, one teacher in a classroom. Make sure that you prepare ourselves for that. We are unfortunately lacking backward. You are quite correct on employment. How do we justify a situation where an economy like us is unable to create just jobs that will be absorbing those who are leaving either education institution, for that matter, those who are not in any of those? The reality of the matter is that we have done little to place a moratorium on retrenchment. That is why the private sector is just following the lead from government, that we are not going to be employing. If anything, we are going to be retrenching those who are permanent. Why they do so? They do so because we are subsidizing those who are young and new entrants into the labor market. And as we've been saying, the youth incentive scheme is not going to help. It's going to be just a replacement of labor, those that are young with those, those that are old with those that are young.
Yeah.
And that is not helpful whatsoever.
Moleko, we haven't even begun to talk about the issue of corruption and what government is doing to deal with the rampant corruption in our government institutions. The issues are so far reaching. And again, I'm going to ask you the question, today's strike surely cannot be expected to deal with the raft of challenges facing our country: education, healthcare, our economy, jobs, corruption.
There needs to be a change of mind in our government, frankly speaking. Minister Tito Mboweni cannot continue with the same recipe. He has been cooking quite nice tin fish and beans fine on his tweet, but that is not working for us. It's not working for the economy. He can't just go back there and say, this is what we are going to do. We've been writing letters, by the way, if you don't know, indicating to the minister what our concerns are. And we've been saying you can't find the same solution, the solution out of the same recipe, i.e., you can't continue to tax the workers and the poor, tax the rich for argument's sake. We've been saying we have to find means and ways to strengthen our revenue collection, and do so by making sure that the illicit financial flow is addressed, and is addressed drastically. We've been saying that because we believe that if some of this intervention can be put in place, they will bring about immediate change and they will relieve workers that are reliant on. We've been saying convert this so-called 350 into a basic income grant and make sure that it's permanent, because the reality of the matter is that our people are heavily dependent on this particular grant. Minister cannot come and say, we don't have the money, we have to pay our debt. We can't continue with that same line, noting the situation we are facing with as a country, and we would have expected him to come out quite differently. We know that that may not be the case. If you listen to what the president said during his SONA statement, if you listen to what the ANC Lekgotla statement is about, if you listen to what the president said during his January 8th statement. And these are some of the things that agitate us more, that unite us more, that push us to organize ourselves and to fight back, because this is nothing other than a reward to the capitalist class rule in our country. So far as we are concerned, this will then be the beginning of many other actions to come. If we have to be on the street at least every month or so, demanding that something drastic happen, demanding that we find a new path, then let it be. What is President Cyril Ramaphosa about? What is happening to the NDP? What is happening to the EPAP? What is happening to the NGP documents, that strategies or plans that we know of? There is nothing so far as we are concerned. There are just piecemeals here and there, and that creates lack of coherence within government, lack of understanding of exactly which path is being taken. Yeah. The minister does not have an easy day today, and we expect him to come out quite clearer and better. Otherwise, I'm telling you, we'll be back again on the street in a matter of time.
Moleko Phakedi, thanks very much for coming on to the AM Report. You're absolutely right. It cannot be business as usual today as Tito Mboweni delivers Budget 2021. He's the SAFTU Deputy General Secretary. The Federation today beginning a nationwide protest against worsening unemployment and economic instability in the country.